Good evening. Welcome to the East Lyme Ad Hoc Committee on Short-Term Rentals regular meeting. This is March 10, 2025. I'd like to have us all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I see no public here this evening, so
Nice letter?
yeah.
Pardon me? Oh, you saw my letter this morning?
Public delegations is the second item on our agenda, and I see no public, so we will move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is approval of minutes. First, the minutes of our public hearing, which was held on February 25th, 2025. So is there, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay. And
Second.
Okay. Any changes, any corrections, any questions? No? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of the public hearing of our committee of February 25, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? We're all set on that. Okay, so item 3B is the set of regular meeting minutes of February 25th, 2025. Do I hear a motion to approve of these minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Okay. All right, any changes, corrections, thoughts, questions, anything? Okay.
It was good, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of regular meeting minutes of our committee of February 25, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? None. Okay. All righty, so we're done with our opening business here, and now we are on to reports of co-chairs. Do you have anything, Gary, to report?
No, nothing to report, yeah.
Okay.
It's like we're moving along.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I'll report is that Board of Selectmen has agreed to an April 2nd presentation. That would be Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, for our committee. That's about it for me. Everything else we can discuss in the items 5 and 6. Okay.
And the last presentation we did, I don't think there was other business that day. They just kind of listened to us.
No, I think they did
Oh,
have
they did,
business.
okay.
It was a very similar time frame where it was just after the budget cycle. They were done with that, and there was nothing pressing at that moment.
Okay.
So it seems like this is a good time.
So we'll have sufficient time.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and I also in my email to Dan Cunningham, I just gave an approximate time of trying to keep it under an hour, like presentation and Q&A. And I think that's reasonable,
Right.
you know, considering both the length of the report. So, okay. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the committee's final editing and approval of our final report and recommendations, including a review of Gary's suggested edits to section 5. So to facilitate conversation tonight, I just thought it might be helpful. As you know, there was the sort of most recent editing, if you will, is based on the February 25th meeting, where after that meeting we talked about what we heard from the public, any other issues we had, and then there was some suggested edits. So I made those edits and I mailed them out on March 1st. So I'm not sure everyone has seen them, but I have them here, and I've color coded just because it's going to make it a little bit easier so that you know what you're looking at. And then with Gary's materials that he sent around, I added a couple of other edits, and then I made those in green. So the copy that you'll get will show the February 25th edits in orange, and thoughts I had from reading Gary's materials in green. So there's also red ink used in our paper, but that stays. That's just, we used red for emphasis when we were writing the recommendations. So red will always stay red, and then if everyone finds things okay, then we can revert back to black. But I just thought it would be easier. This is Dan Beachy's copy, he's not here, and this, I just put some, just so I know who's getting what here, there. And then this is for Paul, and this is for Greg, and this is yours. Yes, they're all the same. I just put initials on because I knew we'd have a couple of absences tonight, so I just wanted. And Brooke, I have a copy for you. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
So you added Gary's edits from this that he sent around?
So what I did was, I took, to some extent, but these orange the ones in orange are the ones that we all agreed upon on February 25th. So they should meet your requests, I think. You know, we had some were very pro forma, like get rid of the word draft everywhere, you know, things like that. Nothing earth shattering. A lot of it was about redoing the introduction to kind of, as to your request, you, both Paul and you, asking about putting in more information about the purpose of the report. And a few other things. I mean, and also I had sent around, I can make a copy if you need it, but I sent an email when I sent these corrections. So the email listed them. So I thought tonight just do it in color so you can see. And then I considered Gary's suggestions, in particular section 5. And then based on that, I had some thoughts. They're limited, very, very limited. As you can see, there's probably about 5 corrections that come from his report. But they are now contained all in one document. So you can see the green items in green print are things that I think that are on the table for discussion.
So the green is Gary's?
The green are my thinking about Gary's.
Okay.
Yeah, so like after reading his materials, I tried to distill what was happening in those materials. And so what I did was, okay, where can I go? We'll go back in the report. And those are my thoughts about having read his materials. But I just thought it'd be easier today to at least work with a document, you know, that we had at least come to the point of agreeing upon, you know.
And that, I'm sorry if I may.
No, go ahead, Paul.
This document then replaces this March document.
Yes, correct,
right?
Correct.
And then whatever we decide to do on this March 10th document is a supplement to this April 24th document?
Yes.
This is what you presented to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, last year, right,
Yeah.
it's a supplement.
So this becomes part of this, or this replaces this?
Well, that's if I can, one of the main points that I wanted to emphasize after reading Gary's thoughts and materials was that this report, you can look at the March version, you know, with the cover on it, or you can look at this one. This final report and recommendations is really an extension. It's an extension and not a replacement of the status report. It's kind of like a sequel, you know, like a sequel.
Or continuation.
A continuation, correct. And that thought is expressed at the bottom of section 1. And so as not to repeat its contents, sections of the status report are frequently referenced in the following pages. So, because that kind of gets to the heart of my thoughts about Gary's materials, that I think that is something that's really important, is to start with the premise that this report is not a standalone, this final report and recommendations. Because as we were discussing, if I can just go down memory lane a little bit, we were trying to figure out how we were going to do this. And I think you, Paul, had asked, are we going to rewrite the whole paper? And then there was a consensus at that point to, correct me if I'm wrong, but to write an addendum, a continuation, an extension of the first report, and not feel you had to repeat all of that data and all of the information and so we would have had to produce a 50-page plus report plus 150 pages of exhibits if we did that. So that's what.
As long as I understand that whatever we come out of this adds to or continues the conversation of the April 2024 report.
Yes, correct.
And that's not being changed.
Yeah, that doesn't go away. It's definitely a basis, clear basis for this report, this final report. Because what happened in that time frame? Wibby came out.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And
I
all
just
that.
want to make sure that I understand it,
Yes.
because I have a bunch of reports here.
I know. It's
Gary
different.
looked like he rewrote the entire report that we did in March 25th for the most part, So I'm just want to know where we're going. That's all.
Yeah.
We're
So
gonna have 5 more meetings, or
since you've raised a couple of questions, maybe I'll just go through what I was thinking of and why I produced the items in green. Would that be helpful? Would that be helpful at this point, or do you just
Well,
want
I'm
to?
sorry to beat a dead horse, but the items in green are beyond section 5, or are they the section 5 that we talked about Gary redoing? Which is,
The green,
there's a
the
lot
green
more
is
than
not
section
mine.
5 is here. No, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a lot more than editing section 5 in your work here.
Yes.
When we left the last meeting, you were gonna redo section 5.
Well, I
Now
reread it.
you're now
half
into
a dozen-
story writing, and you're into all kinds of things here.
I
so-
reread it a half a dozen times, and I believed that it needs to be simpler, it needs to communicate issues clearer. And so that's why I did what I did.
You said that, and I get it,
Correct.
but we spent 2 meetings putting this one together. So I think we're
Well-
gonna spend another couple meetings putting this one back together after you,
You can,
that's what it seems to me.
you can do whatever you like, okay?
I can't, I'm part of the committee.
Period. Go ahead, Ann.
So after looking at, yes, Gary was supposed to focus on section 5. It ended up being more than that. But I have to say, after reading them, and I think there's a certain thing I gleaned from it. The thing I gleaned was, be clear about the purpose of this report. And thank you for your work, but I disagreed with nearly all of it, because I think the framework we have selected for this final report and recommendations is based on all of the past, the status report. It's based on the evidentiary questions that we examined, right? Do we want STRs? What's that evidence? And it was based on the drill down, I'll call it the drill down survey that Gary Ferrugia produced. So for me, and I started to talk about this last meeting, going into options and questions and issues and pros and cons are all the approaches we've already done. We've already done it. We already produced quite a bit of it in the status report. We presented a lot of that. Gary and I did a presentation before the April presentation of last year. So that's where I'm at. And that's why I think, too, Gary had made a suggestion, Gary Cachell, get rid of section 4 on methodology. And I think section 4 is critical, so I disagreed with that. I disagree with footnotes because I don't think they provide flow, and people don't read them, and it's not a legal document. And previously in the original report that we did back in '24, we did not have footnotes. We decided against them, so that's where I'm at. I wasn't crazy about the fictionalized accounts. I saw no place for them. You all can talk about that more. There was a number of other things. Waiting on our decisions because of section 8 concerning the beach communities without their own zoning. We had discussed that issue, and pretty much since we don't have an attorney right now anyway, we had decided that we would put it forth with that question that we've been asking, and we need some real deep research on it. So let's go forth with that. We know Board of Selectmen, zoning, they're gonna have legal review. They're gonna have big time legal review once they propose anything. So we're on the margins here with that. And then as to the difference between Attorney Zamarka and us about zoning versus ordinance, I mean, we didn't get into it in the first report, and he's never been unaccepting of us wanting to like take a zoning path and maybe complement with an ordinance. So I don't think we need to get into that and get into our squabble, if we had a squabble. I don't think we even had a squabble. That issue will also be revisited. Again, selectmen and zoning will have full formal legal review. You know, once they put out an ordinance, once they put out a set of changes to the zoning code. So no need for that. So basically, what I distilled were these things in green. I also felt like we put forth a number of recommendations with rationale. I didn't feel like when in writing this that there was no rationale, that something hung out there like here's a recommendation, but there's no rationale. So that's just the way I've dealt with it. So it's a limited changes in green. And I, sorry, I don't agree with you, but I don't. So that's
Right,
where I'm at.
I don't agree with, I think this document as written is extremely unclear, period. Bottom line. I think it's unclear. If the committee wants to go with it, then that's fine. I won't sign it because I think it's unclear. If the rest of the committee is okay with it, I am completely fine if the rest of the committee wants to sign it. I think it's confusing. It does not set forth rationale, reasons. It doesn't set forth options, why we selected options, why we did not select other options, period. I don't think we need to, the status report was a separate document. This thing should be a standalone recommendation why we did things. I don't necessarily think that the status report, that this has to stand on the status report. This should be a standalone document, period. So if you like it the way it's written, then take a vote, and that's fine. We can have a short visit, have a short meeting. I put in the descriptions of what the people were talking. We had no discussion. We had several public hearings. We had no discussion of what people were saying, period.
Of what people what?
People. The public.
I guess
Okay.
we've had several public hearings, but we've had no discussion.
The document itself does not really discuss anything from the public hearings.
I see.
So-
Okay, I misunderstood.
I understand. So, what I wrote, I thought this was lacking in. If you don't like it, I'm completely fine with it. I write all the time. I throw stuff away all the time. That's whatever it is, it is. But I think this is unclear. Period. So. Go ahead.
As much as I really like you and respect you,
Say whatever you like.
I went back and reread, especially Section 5. I don't know, it seemed clear to me, and maybe I'm just getting STR fatigue, but
That's true.
I thought it kind of captured everything we had heard. And then I wondered, I liked your little scenarios, but then there could be 100 different scenarios, and I wonder why those 4 or 5 that you had in there. And to me, that might be something that could come up in a discussion, like in the presentation. I don't know. It was clear to me, or maybe it's because I've heard it so long all year, but to me, it seems like reinventing the wheel the last minute a little bit, but not that it wasn't great, but
No, if it's not
just-
necessary, it's not necessary.
I don't, I just, like, I understood when I went back and read through it, it seemed okay to me, but that's just my opinion.
Your opinion is a valid opinion. Anyone else?
I liked having those people representing various things. I was troubled, though, that they were fictitious. I think we did hear a number of different viewpoints on this. So I think I would either use real people or not go with made-up people. What I loved about your critique was the way that you distilled everything to a discussion about property rights. And that, to me, is the essence of what we've spent almost 2 years on, in our effort to balance the right of a person to do what they want with their property with the rights of a homeowner to enjoy peace and tranquility in their neighborhoods. I thought that was just inspired. And I'd like to see some way that we can get that theme into the front part of the report. But the other stuff, I think there were some of the points that I agreed with you on, but mostly I don't think the thing needs an overhaul. I don't think it lacks clarity.
Paul?
You know, I thought we spent a lot of time on what we did here in the report, and a lot of this seemed to generate more your personal thoughts and ideas about what the recommendation should be, not a delivery of what we heard in the public hearing. You know, you talked a lot about, you know, skinny dipping, drinking, smoking pot, too much noise, all that. Even though that may be fictional, that is in a report that we're handing. So if someone reads this and hasn't had the pleasure of joining us for the last 2 years, they're going to understand that they're not going to know. Nobody once in any of our conversations mentioned any of those things. You know, so I thought the fictional stories were an attempt to try to color the report in a way that you prefer instead of the conversations that we had in the 2 previous meetings to the last one. Because we didn't hear any testimony about any of these things. So to identify them in a report of the recommendations of the short-term rental committee to the Board of Selectmen, and by the way, I think we ought to make this report, whatever it ends up to be, to the zoning board as well. I don't think we should just make it to the Board of Selectmen. You know, you asked at one point in here, why should zoning listen to us? Nobody's got to listen to us. The Board of Selectmen could take this and light a match to it and then go off on their own thing. They don't have to listen to us. They asked us to report to them. We're recommending some action in the zoning regulations on a number of things. Look at this, look at that, above and beyond the short-term rental thing. So I think it makes sense to present to them so they get a feel for where we are. But that's just my opinion. There's a number of things that are kind of redundant, you know, parking and noise and false assumptions, I think, that you know, are peppered through this whole thing. The one question we really never have asked or never have answered is, do associations that do not have zoning regulations, do they have the right to limit their association activity? And yet we see that Pine Grove spoke on a number of occasions. They are limiting the activity. They don't allow it in their regulations or bylaws, whichever governing document they use, for anything less than 30 days. So my impression was that nobody's renting them there. Nobody said that they're renting for 2 days or 7 days or 10 days. Nothing under 30. Old Lyme, not Old Lyme, but Old Black Point Beach Association doesn't allow them. They don't have zoning, so they're just going on and saying this is what we want and don't want in our association. Oak Grove has, you know, their association bylaws, right, that you put there. And I don't know if those are enforced and get away with it, just the one house that was the problem, is that the only one?
There's no enforcement.
Uh,
There's no enforcement.
But are there other houses that rent for one day and have
Oh, yeah.
parties and all
Absolutely.
kinds of stuff? Okay.
There
Well,
are at least 7 on the front door.
so I think we need to kind of get to the bottom of that, but, you know, that's a question that we can write as a committee, as an addendum to this report, say legal answers we didn't get.
That's
I
in
think-
the
It's
report.
actually in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, it's,
so
it's-
we're gonna get that answer. is
yeah,
my
we're gonna
point.
get it.
You know,
The
it's
town will
a-
get it eventually, which it
But-
should. We did have a very brief answer from Attorney Zamarka when we asked the question, but it was wrapped in some other questions we had asked him. So my feeling was, you know, we really got to take a look at maybe, you know, deeds in these communities or any other authority that's buried in these incorporation documents, right? That's got to be done, because if you read
But that's up
Graves,
to
yeah,
them to
that's
do.
up to them.
We
Yes,
don't- we
but
don't need to present that to
no,
them.
I'm just saying that's why that Section 8 raises that issue, and it all, at the same time, it's kind of a review of the different practices. Like in the second paragraph of Section 8, we summarize
Yeah,
who does what.
I get it. My point is the reflection in Gary's work about, you know, there's a long dissertation about we need that answer, you know, and who's going to listen to us. And, you know, I just want to, we're going to present to the Board of Selectmen, and they may just put this on a shelf, and 2 years from now, they may decide to do something, or 2 minutes from now. I don't know. We can't tell them what to do. And then there was another question about if ordinances, we have to rely upon our existing laws of enforcement, you know. These things are basically not being enforced, you know. Part of the problem I have with a lot of the process here is if we include more ordinances and our current ordinances are ineffective, how are we going to differentiate the new ordinances to make them effective when the old ordinances aren't? It's a question of people following the rules. We follow the rules because we live in neighborhoods and we want to follow rules. People that don't want to follow the rules don't care about this stuff. You know, so anyway, and I don't think we were charged for thinking on this whole dissertation on, I don't know what page, limiting their growth, you know, talks about we have to answer, we need to question every sentence. You know, we were to recommend. We're not telling the Board of Selectmen what they should think. And I think they can come up with all of their own questions based on the opportunities we opened the door for. We're saying, we looked at this, we decided on this. The minority said this, the majority said this. That's in the document that we have. So, and there's still a lot of stuff in here about how this is ruining the character of the town of East Lyme and, you know, all this other stuff.
So you're,
No, I think it's a bunch of hogwash, to
You're
be honest
reading-
with you, because it's not. And, you know, those of us who are experienced with it, and they are seeing that. There are problems, but pick an ordinance, pick an item, pick something. And there's gonna be people that aren't doing the right thing in any one of those. Whether it's a zoning thing, or a noise ordinance, or a parking ordinance, you know. People disrespect it, because that's what they do. Not everybody. So, and I think the land use needs definitions, and I need to be identified in what zones. There's a lot of talk about not allowing this commercial use of short-term rental in residential zones but bed and breakfasts are allowed in every residential zone. Nobody's talking about eliminating that as a commercial use, or funeral homes are allowed in every residential home. Nobody's talking about that as a commercial use. People have lawyers' offices and doctors' offices in residential homes, and those are arguably commercial. So, anyway, you know, I could go on and on about this, and again, you put a lot of work into this, and I don't mean to insult you on the work you're doing. I'm just telling you, I disagree with a lot of the words that
Just,
came on the
I'm just
page,
putting
you know.
forth ideas and arguments. There's zero insult, no offense taken at all. It's just to get
We're past
ideas out, exactly, out there, that's all.
Yeah.
You can,
But the other problem is, we've had it up here. This was done. I think to reinvent the wheel at this hour is, now we got an April 2nd date to go forward. We're gonna try to get through this all tonight and deal with it. I mean, these are Ann's green points. I don't know how many are in here. I didn't open
I
this
think
up.
there's 5, and I can just,
But we don't know what Gary's green points
Points
are. We don't know what
yes,
Ann's green points are. We don't know what Greg's green points are,
you could,
So,
and Greg, yes, Greg, go ahead, if that's, if you'd like to make some.
I was just gonna say I have purple points, but,
That's good.
as I've often said in the past, at our meetings, and even before that, this is a moving target. And the fact that there are 3 new potential bills at the state level speaks to that as well. And what town is going to look sideways at getting 50% of the revenues from short-term rentals? I mean, that's compelling, I think, with the pressure on budgets and school boards going up and all that stuff. My point is that we're making recommendations at a point in time that we know have changed since we started and will change as we go forward. And as Paul pointed out, and several other people, the Board of Selectmen are going to do what they're going to do. They could go anywhere from using this to light their fire at night to, framing it page by page and putting it on the wall. I mean, anywhere in between is what's happening. I feel like John Chicello, but the short of it is that I can fully support this addendum to our original status report. I believe there's enough here that the Board of Selectmen will read it. I hope there's not too much that they won't read it. It's not a bibliography, it's not 200 pages, it's not anything like that. And I think there are valuable ideas in here. And as I said before, I'm absolutely positive that the first thing they're going to do is either make a subcommittee or a new committee, and they're going to revisit all of this with legal counsel looking over their shoulder, which we didn't have. So, maybe, as Ann says, maybe I have STR overkill, but I'm satisfied with this, and I'd be happy to support it in front of the selectmen.
Okay. I heard, thank you. I heard one thought from Gary Ferrugia, about maybe augmenting some language concerning property rights, having a few sentences where it pops up and emphasizing it a bit more. So, I'm amenable to that. That's doesn't seem difficult.
What really was compelling for me when Gary raised that's
Yes.
of course, that's all we've been talking
Yes,
about
I mean,
for
that's
the
like
last
the-
almost 2 years.
Yeah, that's the core of a lot of
Right.
everything. It's
And
not
the,
everything, but it is the core.
And the work and purpose of this committee was to try to find the correct balance between an owner's right to lease his or her property and a resident homeowner's right to enjoy peace and tranquility in the neighborhood they've invested in. And I think our recommendation of an ordinance for a permitting process and safety inspection and zoning revisions that address noise and parking and occupancy is completely comports with trying to balance property rights.
So, because this is, and again, we go back in time, this is an addendum, as Greg mentioned, to the first report, because there's so much in there. I mean, there's every local town's, situation discussed in there. the worldwide problem of STRs discussed in there. It goes on and on. The first information we got from the fire marshal, the fire chief, from our police chief, etc., is in there. So Diane Vitaliano's, the assessor's information is in there. It's just full of stuff. So again, I think that was a wise decision to do a status report at that time as we were waiting. But it does contain a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, because in fact, Gary here was responsible for taking those 2 public hearing sets of information and giving us the breakdown of the pros and the cons on each of the topics that were raised. So there's lots, if looking through, I forget what section it is, I can pull out in a minute, but of the original status report, there's a lot of that discussion. And I just thought, again, that's somewhat in the past for us. We've and as I said in the methodology section, we've moved forward. We're in a deeper analysis, and that's why we're able to answer the evidence question that Gary wanted us to answer. That's why we're able to finally answer questions that you raised in the survey. I don't think we could have done that months back, right? I think we needed to have information, we needed to analyze, and whatever options were possible, whatever issues came up, all that's like part of the big pot of it all. But to reach resolution, to reach a recommendation, at some point you have to answer the questions that you raised, right? I don't see how else, if we didn't have a survey, we would have had to just do it manually as we did with our evidence question. So that's why I feel like this is more forward looking. I think adding other things about options and the pros and cons, to me, is more backward looking, where we were. So that's why I did what I did. I think we can probably add a few sentences again where possible. For example, if we look at, where was it? Look at page 8 of the document handed out to you, under section B, regulations. This is part of the zoning changes that we're recommending. You know, define STRs, think about the regulations you want, and then eventually permitting in section C. But that section B, again, this is the beauty of having the status report. You can just go back to section 8 of that status report, and there's a whole section in there that, in paragraphs, that outline the regulations that are commonly imposed on short-term rentals to combat either real or perceived or potential negative impacts, right? And so again, I'm trying to bridge that gap, and I do it throughout the paper. I try to go back to the status report and not repeat ourselves, because again, you'd have this opus. I think you'd have it would be like the rise and fall of the Roman Empire size, you know what I mean? It would be very, very large and somewhat outdated, some info outdated. So, but I do think we can add some stuff about either in the purpose section or where we can about this.
Did you calibrate that?
About
300
property rights. If you want that to be, woven, we can
I
weave.
think a couple sentences or even a couple graphs in the purpose covers that base.
Yes, because it was a main point in the status report, because that was our first time hearing all that. We got it from generic articles, right? Or we'll say we got it from researchers and observers of short-term rentals, writing academic articles or other articles, right? Then we got it, and this is said in that status report, we got it again from our own public hearings, the same sets of conflicting viewpoints, right? We got that same, what was in the academic articles appeared in reality for us, but it's that same set of issues, So that's not, I don't think that's a difficult thing to do. To Greg's point, you talked about the moving target, and that's been in my head for some time, that this is like, all policy is moving target, generally. This one is particularly so, because there's so many crazy options. It's like endless options, endless issues, right? So that, I added a last sentence to the conclusion that,
Where are you now?
last sentence, page 15. It's in green. And this again is kind of based on some of what I saw on Gary's materials. The last sentence, I added an extra sentence. The committee is confident that the town, in considering the committee's recommendations or its recommendations, and any subsequent relevant developments, can adopt an appropriate and effective policy. So there is the moving target point, and that, again, that's another point that could be bolstered somewhere else in the piece. But I think, that's about it that I'm thinking of, that I've heard so far. Yeah, because we even tell them a couple of times in the report, as far as proposed legislation is concerned, stay updated with that. We tell them to stay updated with recent developments that happened in Groton and in Preston, because those are recent developments based on Whitty. So see how that's all working out. How's that enforced? And I think that was our issue with enforcement. We kind of felt like we got to some information, but we really need more information because this stuff's so new and changing. So it's kind of mentioned 3 times in this report as a kind of point of advice to the Board of Selectmen and to the Zoning Commission. You're going to need to stay updated. You can't just look at this and look at the status report and be done with your job. It's going to be what is happening,
And the zoning people might see it now, but there could be totally different people on zoning next year.
That's right, too. And I agree with Greg's point about the legislation. There's been a push, last year there was a push to share, the monies that the state takes in, and now there's another push to have the towns actually levy short-term rental taxes, right? That's in one version of one of those
That would be
proposed
in
bills.
addition to sharing 50% of the
That's
state
right.
fee.
Yes.
That starts to sound expensive.
When I was looking again at caps, and I did add some stuff on caps, by the way, that just to clarify something there. But there's a number of towns that I realize actually do impose those taxes on STRs. There's a lot, especially in these, communities like in Colorado, which are vacation spots. They're hot spots, and that there's a lot of money to be made, for some of those communities.
That's why the state is looking at these things. They're looking to collect more money from the bill that they passed a few years ago, asking for 15% from short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for,
Yeah.
Granicus, is that Granicus?
Yes, Granicus
Talked
is the
about,
company. Mm-hmm.
We're growing 15% on short-term rentals every year, when they really truly haven't identified every short-term rental in the community. So that's basically a guess, the 15%, right? We could be decreasing 15%. If they said we have 200 and something, I think, right? There could be 350, and
Or 120.
yeah, So, to keep quoting Granicus 15% increase is really, we're not really sure of that.
No, that was
It's
their.
one data point.
That's one data
yeah.
point, and it's
Yeah.
taken as that too. They gave us an assessment, and honestly, I wasn't gonna go back, because also, that was that free assessment, you'd have to pay for another assessment. And I figured once it gets to Board of Selectmen or Zoning Commission, that's the time that they'll have to just do, get some clearer numbers there.
But how would they get the numbers?
They would have to, they'd have to look at those platforms and just compare them.
But those would
Yeah.
be the only ones that they're getting, is the ones that are listed on a platform.
Right.
There are a number of people who
That
have
don't,
come
yes.
from year
Yes.
after year after year for generations that
Yes, I
they
agree
were
with
called
that.
vacation rentals then.
Yeah.
Now they're called
an
short-term
estimate.
rentals, right? So
It's an estimate.
that's, I don't think we need to have to answer everything. If we were unanimous in every point, it would be easy for us to say, here's a report, here's why we
Yeah,
think
I
we
know.
are, and here we are. But I think what we're providing to whoever wants to listen, the town, the board, the zoning commission, is this is what we found out.
Right.
Some people thought this way, some people thought
I
that.
know.
You know, there's even.
And
there's
that I think is a key point. Like, rather than say we chose this option because this, and this, we say this was the majority opinion. Minority opinions had this to offer and this to offer, and it's in there.
Yeah, so that actually works out as a very good framework, because we weren't all in agreement on big ideas and smaller ideas, and sometimes we were in agreement on certain things. Like, everyone wanted, for example, no matter where they were on the idea of short-term rentals, if they're there, then we should have inspections of them, you know, so, yeah, so that's interesting.
And I don't think every commission has attorneys lined up with them. I think the Board of Selectmen do. Do you have attorneys present at every one of your zoning commission meetings?
No, in fact, it's hard to get them to come.
Yeah. So if you present a text amendment, which is a change to the regulations,
I mean,
Bill writes it, you guys consider it. and vote.
sometimes I will try to get permission to call an attorney, or we've had special requests, but as a rule, they don't come.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I remember that's what happened when I was on zoning. They never came. Nobody was there. If we needed something, Bill was trusted to, you know, be the expert and provide his opinion, whether it was right or wrong. It didn't, you know, that's the lit. So we're not going to have attorneys at zoning. The Board of Selectmen is probably going to ask for some
Yes.
clarification on some points than an attorney.
With ordinances,
Yeah.
that's what they tend to do. There's
Yeah.
usually a review, if not the writing of that ordinance, by the attorney, so.
And I only bring that up, Sue, because I don't think we need, you know, this address of just, this is why we thought this way. You know, we're presenting options for them. This is, some of the community believes this, some of the community doesn't. Some of us believe this, some of us don't. And, you know, but here are the problems that people have said, here are the benefits. Choose what you want to do. We're an advisory committee.
More experience than I do. All I do is try to make things clear, that's it.
Yeah.
So if you guys are happy with just this nebulous kind of thing, then let's go for it.
Listen, you
That
want
was
to take,
kind of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's what I'm hearing, the position, I disagree with you with respect to our purpose. I think our purpose should be give a little more rationale, a little more insight, a little more reasoning, and,
there's quite a bit of it in there.
well,
I do too.
I don't
I
think it's
just
clear.
disagree. I mean, I feel as though we have distinct recommendations of a general nature, and then within each section, with that particular recommendation, there's A, rationale, B, there's there's other information that are kind of like extra suggestions, you know, so it lends itself to a chart in my mind, where you can, you know, show each recommendation and you can name its rationale, and even if it's presented in a summary way, for conciseness, and then you see these sub recommendations that, you know, support the main
Just a
recommendation.
look out for
So,
one passing down.
but,
You know, we recommended fire
oh, yes.
inspections.
Oh,
So
this is
I had my
interesting.
short-term rental inspected by the fire marshals.
Oh,
And
Oh,
this
wow.
is the report that they gave me.
Oh, interesting.
So I just thought it might be interesting for you to see it if you want to look. If you don't, that's okay. It was a 10-minute inspection. I have 2 floors.
Passed.
$65?
They didn't send me a bill yet. But
Gotta check the chart.
But I meant to ask my office manager, do they send us a bill at the restaurant? They just came and
Did you?
inspected the restaurant.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
if
don't know how that
we
works.
pay 65. I gotta ask her.
Yeah.
I met them at a 3-unit commercial property that I have, and they went through all of those, and I don't remember ever paying a bill for that, so I don't. But it was very painless. You walk through, smoke detectors work.
This is for short-term rental,
This is the
and they
short
charge you $64.
I don't know. The
That's what the
$65
fire
came
marshal
from
told us.
That's what the
Gary's.
fire marshal said. But they
Gary
don't charge
suggested-
regular rentals.
They don't have a charge to
To do long-term rentals, they don't have
They
a
don't
charge.
inspect long-term rentals or I think apartments under, I think you said apartments under 3.
They do bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes, they have to for bed and breakfast, right? And then, if a unit can accommodate 7 or more, isn't that right, Greg? 7 or more, then they've got to do it. And then multiple multifamily is different. That's a different requirement,
Yeah.
right? Okay. All right, so, so I think it's an easy task, relatively easy task to, weave in a little more wherever that issue of property rights raises its head, or in the introduction again or something, we can just highlight that again. I think too, the group I went back and just looked at our last few meetings, and on the 13th of January and on the 27th of January, those were very significant meetings because we looked at the results of the survey, got into deeper discussion, and the first review and editing of this happened on the 27th of January. So those were, I think, very important, and I think we were kind of on the same book and page on much of this. So, okay, if we're going to move this forward, we would have to formally vote and take a vote. So I would entertain a motion.
The green and orange part, move forward,
Yes,
is that?
That's written.
yes.
Huh?
With
You mean
the
the other one,
understanding that,
No.
yeah, I can fashion I
You
can
want this one, green, orange?
Yeah, and purple. I said my purple comment should be in there too.
Okay.
No.
And by the way, exhibits stay the same. The only change in exhibits is just some page numbering because we added more. But that's an easy fix. Just replace that list with I think there was like 3 or 4 that just changed pages because of length.
So we could have a motion that says, I move that we accept this report with minor revisions for presentation to the Board of Selectmen.
What?
Minor
With the
revisions.
minor revisions to the exhibit page and minor revisions concerning property
Property
rights. Those two changes.
So moved.
So we have a motion by Greg, and do we have a second?
Second.
And a second here by Gary Ferrugia. Okay, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify.
Just for
Yeah,
discussion.
go ahead.
How, we're gonna vote on this when it's not complete. There's gonna be revisions coming in there. I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay,
I
okay.
think if we're gonna vote on it, we should,
You just wanna
hash
see
out
it?
in the next half hour what you wanna put in here.
Okay.
We can do that, but I don't think it should be left open to.
Oh, okay, so I could tell you right now let's go to the exhibit page. I can tell you what, that the exhibit page is just,
Which one?
the exhibit page, which is not actually in here. I didn't provide it because, I wasn't sure what the heck.
It's on this March document?
It's actually in a February document, because in the March document, I didn't bother doing it there, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4 page changes. This is called the list of exhibits. It was back in a copy of it says February 25, that version. I supplied everyone with the exhibit list.
This one.
February of 25, you should see an exhibit
Just
list.
changing page numbers.
And there's no change in any
Table of contents.
exhibit. It's just, like Exhibit 2 will now be on page 2. Exhibit 3 will now be on page 2.
I don't know.
Exhibit 5 will be on page 3. And there's one more, Exhibit 10 will now be on page 7. Did you get that, Brooke?
Just the
Could you say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure, so there's only 4 page changes to the list of exhibits document. Exhibit 2 will now be on page 2. Exhibit 3 will be on page 2. Exhibit 5, page 3, Exhibit 10, page 7.
Thank you.
And, you know, that, we can always double check that as we go along, but that should be okay. And then as far as any language as to property rights, where would you like to see that, and what would you like it to say? Because we could just work it out now.
Well, I knocked out 6 paragraphs here, because Gary's suggestion was that we come with
Okay.
an explanation.
Okay.
And so I keyed up off of the property rights thing.
Okay.
And I wrote this thinking this could be like our introduction to the report
Okay.
that states the purpose, but it's just in draft form. I've got copies
Okay.
for everyone if you want to
Sure,
look at
we can
this.
take a look. We got to work it out. Sure. Now, is it take into consideration any of the existing introduction, or you've kind of redone it?
Well, it's not as
Thank you.
comprehensive as yours. Do we have enough there?
I think we do. Yep. And this is extra here, I think.
Do you need one?
Thank you.
Because like I said, the discussion about property rights really resonated with me. It was like,
Okay.
that's what we've been doing for 2 years, is arguing property rights. So I just kind of framed that around this.
So I think the seminal, if I could say, this, to me, the seminal paragraph is the third paragraph.
It is.
And I think we can take it and place it someplace, because it's either gonna, you know, and remember, in methodology, we also even talk about our goals. Remember that? The famous goals that we all spent time figuring out. And as I said, if you go back and look at the goals, that's actually an exhibit here, we actually achieved a lot of those goals. I'm thinking maybe in section 4. I'm just thinking, if not in the introduction, I'm just speaking out loud now. I'm looking at section 4, and this sort of reminds me of the language that we have about in the last paragraph of section 4, page 4, which is, it was important to point out that we had established these goals. That's one place. Another place might be in introduction.
It seems like an introduction to me.
I think that,
I don't agree with all the points in it, but it seems like it's an introduction.
I wrote it thinking the same thing,
Yeah.
that this
Yeah.
is like,
It's where we
here's
are.
why we did this.
Yeah.
Maybe we could take, go ahead, Ann. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I thought the first 3 paragraphs were really right on. I think the rest of it kind of is covered, and I think, you know, zoning regulations for noise, that would be more ordinance to me. I think, to me, the last 4 paragraphs are a little bit more confusing, but I think the first 3 are really good to get across.
I don't know, did this report recommend that they pass an ordinance authorizing annual permitting and zoning regulations that address parking, noise, and occupancy?
Not parking, not noise.
I don't, huh?
Yeah.
Not
Not
parking
noise, you're right, it wasn't
Yeah,
noise.
so
I mean,
I,
I don't think parking either, I mean, because we can't override town ordinances on
Yeah.
parking on the
right.
street,
Yeah,
just
I-
because it has
I
a,
think,
just because it has a,
I get what you're doing here is a summary here, but I think we cover the topics okay, you know, in terms of the various recommendations, you know, so I think, I'm not sure we wanna add any more. I think this again, to me, is an important point that you make, and the third paragraph.
It's a little, now that I'm reading it, it's a little wordy.
Oh.
It could use some editing, but,
Like
yeah,
strike
that
the right
was,
balance, okay.
that was what struck me
Mm-hmm.
when I saw Gary talking about property rights.
Okay. I'm looking at places in the paper where it would be, I mean, obviously the introduction, because,
That could be the first paragraph in section 1. Not
I
replacing.
think whatever this says, section 1, the final report and recommendations, could certainly follow these paragraphs and still mean what you want it to mean. I think I'd eliminate the fourth paragraph, and I have problems with the last two, but
yeah,
1, 2, 3, and 5, you know, you add those together and then let the final report and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen provides an update, blah, 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 blah. Because you know, then you go right into WIBI and all the other stuff on here. This is kind of something that people can read. And I just say that because I didn't agree with an ordinance authorizing a permit process.
yeah, I don't wanna load them up on the recommendations yet in an
Yeah.
introduction. That's why I would
That's what I mean,
focus.
those
Yeah,
four
I would-
paragraphs, I think,
I-
hit it spot on.
Yeah,
That's what we did.
I think that's good.
I would focus on this third paragraph as really, you know, trying to work it in and weave it in.
I mean, that's the essence of the thing, and I don't understand why you just don't want to put it up front. Why does it have to be buried somewhere?
Oh, it isn't better, I'm just trying to figure out even within the introduction where you would put in this paragraph with a little editing, you know?
I would move section 1 all the way down, final report and recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. You know,
Yeah.
and then put those 4 paragraphs. This final report and recommendation is.
Well, that's up here, I mean, it's in the introduction already, the final report and
Yeah,
recommendations.
that I took right off.
Yeah, right, so that's, we don't need it in essence, right. And then I see what you're doing here, I went through the same mental gymnastics about paragraph 2, where you're trying to sum up the work product, and I went back to the original status report, and that was a long set of sentences about all we had done. So, work product, could be summarized. We talk about the hearings here. And then striking the balance. I think this could actually be the end of the first paragraph. Because this is all kind of mechanical, you know, what's going on mechanically. It proposes the key recommendation so that you know that this is all coming, right? It tells you that's coming, it tells you that it's been a challenge and that we've made efforts to do this. I
So
think between
Paul's
these
idea
two,
of
between these
just
two.
taking these 3 graphs
Mm-hmm.
and grafting them on top of here, eliminating the redundancy, seems to achieve that. Did I paraphrase you correctly?
You said 3 paragraphs, and I said 4. I don't know which.
Oh, that's right. And
But why don't we just take the word introduction out of section 1 of your report, Ann?
Yeah, I recently added that, I know.
Well, no, if you just take the word introduction out, section
Yes.
1, purpose and scope of this report, and then it
Okay.
goes on to talk about it. And then put introduction on top of this stuff as a cover page, or the first page,
Ah,
right? And then this is the introduction, right? This says recommendations to, it's actually Board of Selectmen, but the recommendations, we don't need that. We just put introduction. This is the final report, recommendation of the Board of Selectmen.
Although that's,
Report as a result
that's
of
what
2
that
years, I mean, it's just informational, this is what we're doing. The committee was determined to strike the right balance. And even the recommendation of the ordinance and zoning acknowledge, I mean, that can go somewhere else probably. And
Yeah.
maybe the first 3 paragraphs, you're probably right,
yeah,
you know. And then go into your section 1, you don't have to renumber everything, you just make this the introduction.
it's a subhead.
I like that.
trying to think. I think you can just take this and, you know, we can rework a few words, but I think you can take this and add it here in the introduction, maybe between the 2 paragraphs, because this paragraph is also talking about the general approach of doing what's best for the town, respecting legal requirements and complications, and then this could be an emphasis paragraph. Indeed, you know, the committee was determined at the outset to strike that balance. You know what I mean? And like, once you get to the end of this is the guts of you know, of everything, kind of.
And I think I like Paul's approach, where
Okay.
this is, here, we're in the process, this is where we're going with this
Okay.
report. This is more of an anthem you would sing before you start the report.
Okay, so you want, I mean, you want this to be the introduction then? I mean,
Just, I think Paul's idea is great, just a cover page with this as a subhead, and then boom, into the report.
Only the first 3 paragraphs.
Just the first 3 paragraphs.
Correct.
Yeah.
oh, so almost like an executive summary.
Correct.
That Greg always
But
likes.
can-
Right.
and
Gotcha.
This would be the introduction. This gets into detail, section 1. You start talking about Woodby in
Right.
the first section. People aren't gonna wanna hear that. They wanna know, what have you guys been doing, you know? We did
Okay.
2
so-
years of research. This is the
Okay.
final report. Committee was
Okay.
determined, you know?
I missed the Caribbean junket.
You can say, huh?
I said I missed the Caribbean junket.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it stands by itself, 1, 2, 3 stand by themselves, ahead of this, which we will now just pull purpose and scope
Put a
of
page
the
right
report.
on top of those.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha,
You can put
okay.
the short-term rental report, you can list the purpose or whatever that was charged by the, if you want, by the Board of Selectmen, there's a written one there, if you think
Yeah.
that's important, you can put your name on it, the front, everybody's names on it if you
So,
want.
well,
And
this,
then go to section 1.
so remember, the cover of the report looks like that,
Okay,
and that won't change. So the next thing would be this kind of,
be an introduction,
be
Yes.
basically a executive
So-
summary.
a new introduction.
Yeah, which Greg has wanted forever. He wanted it in the first report. Okay. Is there another terminology for executive summary? I mean, is there another wording that we can use?
Gobbledygook.
Throat clearing?
Throat clear? And get ready to rock and roll? I don't know. Okay, so we'll call it something and its own page. It won't even be paged, because then we don't have to change the pages again.
No,
Or the exhibit
need to.
things and all that business. Okay, and we get rid of the introduction thing. Okay, so those can be done, and, you know, we'll circulate. And remember too, we're taking a vote on the floor to send it forth. If someone sees something that's, you know, a terrible typo or something that doesn't make sense, you look at an exhibit and it's all crazy, obviously, we can make those corrections, you know, there's no prohibition there. It's sending this in its essence. Okay. All right. Okay. So back to. So I think we're clear on what needs to be done. Yes. We hashed it out.
Is there still a motion on the?
Yes. There's still a motion on the floor. Okay. So all those in favor of sending the what should we call this? We will call it the
Penultimate draft.
the ultimate draft provided this evening, and with its edits concerning edits based on Gary Ferrugia's suggestions to produce let's say to include an executive summary. Okay, and we have the body of it available. Okay.
You're gonna put these 3 paragraphs as the executive,
Yes.
as they're written.
Yes. We're gonna,
I would
He's gonna-
do some more
he's
editing.
gonna edit. I can. And we can.
But you can do
No,
that.
we can do together if you want. That's fine. That's fine. We can edit just for linguistic purposes and ease of reading or something, but nothing substantive. Okay, so that's how that will go. Exhibits will be, as I have said to Brooke previously, with those pages. Okay.
Didn't you do 40 years of editing?
Oh my God.
Wasn't enough.
Obviously.
It was for me.
It's so handy having an editor. It's right. It's really handy. You're right sitting next to the writer here. Okay. All right. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye. So anyone opposed? Okay. So okay, and you have that. Okay. So the ayes have it. So this will be the final report and recommendations to Board of Selectmen. Okay. All right, we'll move on to section 6, which is the presentation, and I'll try to keep this, relatively short here, but not knowing how we would all end up, I did kind of begin thinking about it, because we talked about it last week, so, and I kind of looked at the different sections, and I thought of, and since we talked about last week, everyone would like to contribute and participate in the presentation. I know there's a couple of people that didn't want to do it last time, and for the sake of just tonight's discussion, I'm making that same assumption that John Salino has said he doesn't really want to do that. In the past, he has said that, so I'm making that assumption. Think the same thing of Mr. Beachy, Dan Beachy, but we can check in on that. But I actually created a little list of the sections and who I thought might fit, but you can tell me if it doesn't make sense. But before we get to that, we had talked about, obviously we have to have an oral presentation, and then people had talked about perhaps doing, a PowerPoint or something. I mean, that's work. I don't know that I see the need for it, because we don't have a lot of statistical information to convey. We don't have charts with, trends and all this. We had a few things like that in the first report from Granicus. So I'm not, and you'd have to work in tandem with someone. You can't do it by yourself. It's work. I'm not seeing the need of it. Is anyone have thoughts on the PowerPoint thing? Or,
I don't know if we need it. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can talk to the report, and we'll hand out the report.
Yes, and they will definitely, as they got last time, they get a folder. There's the report, the exhibits, so there's a physical document there, as they did with the status report. They got the whole thing.
We'll talk to the sections in the report.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then presentation-wise, we're presenting what's in the report in the majority view, and can discuss minority view. But I want to be clear that if Gary, you have some things you want to convey, if Paul, you have some things you want to convey, if anyone has something, different, unique.
Jesus Christ, we're gonna be here for 20 hours if Gary and I have things we're conveying.
Yeah, I know, but I'm thinking there could be that point at which, we obviously had minority viewpoints on things, so it's important, I think, to speak to those to some extent, I think that's important going forward. So if we do, the brief overview of each section, and then we have a little bit of that, I'm not adverse to that. I think that's probably healthy and helpful. So like individual member comments could be made later. Someone can, make a comment about anything, and then there would be a Q&A. So here's some proposed assignments of sections, assuming that everyone present would like to speak and get to the podium and just describe what we've decided upon in our recommendations. So I'll do the introduction, and I don't mind doing WIBI and its application to East Lyme. And then Gary, we can change all of these, nothing's written in stone. Gary, I was thinking for you, Public Act 24-143 and all these proposed bills.
Not interested.
You're not interested, okay.
Too dry.
Too dry, okay, so there's a taker for that. Methodology, Greg, I thought since you're the scientist on board here, that you would like to handle that. And also, that's number 4, section 4, and section 5, the first recommendation about allowing short-term rentals and limiting growth. And I thought for you, the section 6, the zoning regs.
Who's doing section 5?
I thought Greg would speak.
Greg?
Yes, on 4 and 5. And then Anne on zoning
Okay with
regs.
I have obligations Wednesday night. I have to find out if I can
Okay.
get out of it.
Okay, all right, but we'll keep you penciled in,
Okay.
okay, for that one. These are, again, just my sort of connecting people with topics based upon a lot of things that have transpired in the last year and a half. Paul, I thought you might want to deal with the section 7 on the complementary ordinance, and as well section 8, which is about the beach community practices. Those are things that I thought, you have either researched or that you have commented on extensively.
You want me 7 and 8?
Yeah, just for now, again, look it over, and we've got time to figure this out. And section 9, I would bring you back for prior uses. I'm trying to have someone with that zoning expertise talk about, it's a brief section, but pre-existing non-conforming uses. And then this, Gary, enforcement and maybe the statements of purpose. I think you've kind of championed those topics while you've been here, okay? And Gary, I had you for the legislation, and then I had you for the conclusion as to wrap things up, because I'm going to try to do the intro. But you can think about those, and then there will be individual comments. But is there another section that you want to? You can even share some of that with Anne on zoning regs if that works out. It's
You
less
could have-
dry.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I can be
Yeah,
there.
you need to check your schedule and whatever. But those are other possible areas that you might have that level of comfort discussing. So just a thought.
What did you end up with?
Enforcement
And statements of purpose.
What is that, section 9 and 10?
So sections
10 and 11.
10 and 11. 10 and 11. I just thought if we share the responsibility of as a group, we have to start dividing up the paper, right? So we're gonna have to figure out what in the paper you want to talk about. So just keep that as penciled in, and I'm comfortable talking about anything, so it doesn't matter. But and I'd swap with someone if need be. I might want to feel like I want to do the introduction, but other than that, I'm okay. Okay.
I don't know, I think we're missing a discussion of the issues as opposed to just jumping into the weeds. So I will present a section on issues.
Okay.
Is that in this report?
It's not in the report, but
Well, the report,
well,
the
it is in
presentation,
the report.
well,
We do talk about issues.
the
It's
whole-
not a section of issues.
the report, the presentation doesn't have to mimic they can read. The presentation should supplement the document. So if I think the document is deficient in setting forth various issues, then I would like to discuss the issues. If you don't want me to do that in the presentation, then I'll do it in a dissent, if you will. But I think that if the document is deficient, then the presentation is going to be deficient. Issue with the presentation of discussion of issues. I just
What
for
word-
35 years, that's all I've done is discuss issues. So I'm just feeling a hole. That's all. Nothing but I just see a hole in the document and the presentation.
What
So-
order do you see all that happening
Well, discussion of issues.
in? Issues and how they fit in with all the other. I was having trouble keeping up with what Ann was saying, so I'm not sure I know who's doing what section. But where do you see yourself? Up front after the intro?
I think in everything you have an intro and then you discuss the issues.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a politician. I'm a lawyer who I know this one way of writing and arguing. So it could be wrong for what you folks are used to. So I would present. I think issues need to be presented. That's all.
So Ann would intro, you would issue after that. And then Greg would talk about the science of it. I don't know where, if Ann shows up, I don't know, is there a section 6 on zoning? Is that,
I think you said
Is that-
6 and 9.
Oh,
You
let's
had
look
me-
at you here.
6. She said 6 for you.
6 is on zoning?
6 and 9, because those are the zoning related items. I see that you want to make a larger point of issues, but I think it would be helpful to know what those issues are eventually, and I just don't, maybe I'm just got blinders, but I just don't see where this report is deficient in discussing issues. Again, we are a supplement to the first report, but I don't see, and we rely on it, but I just don't see where we're not getting in the weeds on balancing evidence and all that. I think that was a good decision, because I think if you're putting recommendations forth, you can't get too much into the weeds on some of that. But
I would think that Gary introducing issues after you do the intro would set the stage for the rest of what we talked about, and then people can decipher what the issues
Okay.
were when they hear the rest of our report. He'll give his opinion. I think he's entitled to give his
yeah,
opinion.
absolutely, I don't have a problem with that.
I think
So
he should.
are you, I'm
Pardon me, go ahead, Gary.
Are you thinking of something similar to what you did for the status report, where you kind of framed it as what people told us were the issues?
No. I haven't envisioned the presentation yet. So
Okay. Because I thought that was very effective, the way you did it. The issues were being raised, but they were coming from the mouths of people that we heard in the public hearings.
no, I think it would be a little more technical. I have to think about it. I haven't thought about the presentation, so. But I think issues need to be discussed.
So, I had listed out some sort of universal questions, say this little piece of paper. So are they things like the questions that we have addressed as a group and debated, like, are short-term rentals desirable? Should East Lyme allow short-term rentals? That's an issue, right? Not even thinking about Wibby. If that's a yes, should STRs be regulated? If yes, what should be regulated? how should the regulations be created, zoning, ordinance, combination? And then the fifth question is about enforcement. Are you framing things that way in terms of issues?
The issues need to touch the big picture, and probably, who's doing the intro?
Me.
So what are you gonna say in your intro?
Well, I mean, just some essential points that are already in this introduction. You know, what this report does, what it proposes to do, the fact that we've given a previous report, that it's an update. You know, first and foremost, it's an update. It's got WIBI, it's got the state statute discussions, brings you up to date on some local changes in the towns that we need to, you know, keep front and center. And that, in addition to that, we've, you know, it proposes the 6 key recommendations and a lot of specific related recommendations, you know, pretty much like this, and to really emphasize the scope of the report. Again, it's an addendum, it's a continuation, it's an extension, you know, and that, you know, basically they should have the original report somewhere nearby when they're, you know, because it's referenced a million times, because if we didn't do that, we'd be writing, like I said, a 50-page to 100-page, 150 pages, you know, with exhibits report. And I think we made that decision as a group a long time ago, that we needed a status report, because we were going to take a hiatus, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel when we came back. And I have to say, I think that worked out.
So, if I may, I think I'm a little uncomfortable with Gary talking about issues that nobody's heard. I would be comfortable with him presenting a minority view or a dissenting view or you know, whatever you want to call it at the end.
Yeah.
Is he in the minority?
Just as Paul may have minority view about no regulation or little regulation. I mean,
then they can have a joint.
Yes, they can have a joint presentation. I kind of like your idea.
Because we say in the paper that there's majority opinions and minority opinions, and you know, we can say that, you know, here's the presentation of the majority of the results, and then Paul and Gary would like to talk about some dissent and alternate views.
I don't know if I want to talk about dissent. I may disagree with some sections of statements in section 7 and 8, but, you know, I think framing the issues in whatever form he wants to make, I think that's acceptable. I don't know if he's going to pull an issue out of, you know, something that happened in Anchorage, Alaska. You know, I mean, he's just going to talk about what we talked about. These are what you see are the issues. You outlined them in here.
Now,
I think
you
it's
know,
a good time to make the case for it, if you like. And you're not going pro and for. You're just saying here are the issues.
the issues need to be said out in front.
Right.
Period. I don't see why there's a resistance to stating the big picture issues that the town is facing. We spent a lot of time trying to make a decision on what those issues need to be stated clearly to the Board of Selectmen, to the town. You know, not everyone is going to read your prior status report. They may not even be able to find it, residents meaning. They may not even be able to find it on the internet. So, I don't know.
So what if
People
the,
want to hear issues.
what if the issues come before anything? It's like, maybe you recall, these issues have been bubbling up in our town, and then here's the report that addresses them. Maybe they're the very first thing before the introduction.
I think an introduction is probably first, and then a statement of issues.
I agree with that.
I don't
I don't
see
think
that.
we should be censored.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, well, first of all, now wait a minute. I think I've been the only one on this committee who has, for 2 years, talked about both sides of the issues. I present issues, both sides. Why people think I'm gonna go off the rails and talk about things that I haven't talked about already?
No one's thinking that. We're just trying to
Well,
figure out a
I
best
mean,
way.
Greg's over there, I don't know what he's gonna be saying over there, and he's shaking his head.
I, for the record, here we are in meeting number 61. I'm supporting your opinion.
It took a while.
2 years. Wait till I'm 2 years.
All right. Okay, so we have an issue, we have an introduction, we have an issues section, and are you speaking anywhere else, or?
Sure, I'll do a dissent if I need to do a dissent.
Well, I mean, you can do, yeah, I know, I mean, you can obviously jump up there individually, and anyone can. It doesn't mean that you're in the majority or a minority, and you can just make a certain point and get up there. And same thing with questions and answers. When the questions are asked, someone can volunteer to answer, and someone else can, chime in as necessary. I mean, it's not, and here's a point too. I think in terms of preparation for this, I mean, obviously reviewing this report, obviously reviewing the status report, I think you'll be, very prepared. I don't think we're gonna be, there may be questions we get that we do not have an answer to, that's fine, we've seen that in the past, that's not a big deal. But I think, it's pretty straightforward in terms of your personal prep for this, whether you're gonna speak about a section or answer a lot of questions because you're comfortable doing that, whatever you do. Okay.
And if people ask questions to the person standing there at the time, if they don't feel prepared to answer that, anyone else can feel free to jump
Yeah.
in and answer the question.
I think we tried to relegate Q&A to the end, unless it was a point of clarification, like someone couldn't find a document or they're confused about something that just needed a quick sentence. So I think we try to lump all that at the end, because sometimes the question is answered by the time we get to the end of the presentation.
Right.
So so de minimis questioning in between, Q&A at the end, and if it's something that you've researched, something you feel comfortable talking about, just jump in. It doesn't, there's no assignment there, I think, again, I think there's enough clarity between the two reports to answer questions. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, and then Paul, you had mentioned about zoning, about trying to make a presentation before zoning at some point. So, Ann, what are your thoughts?
I would like to get the zoning committee to come to the Wednesday night meeting and be in the audience, but depending on how slowly or fastly the Board of Selectmen acts on it, I don't know when you'd want to present it to zoning. Elections are in November. You might want to wait till the new zoning board
I think
is elected.
if you have the zoning board come to the Board of Selectmen, it would have to be a joint meeting by statute. You'd have
Yeah.
to post an agenda, you'd have to have everybody there. There'd have to be
Yeah.
formal introductions as to how the meeting is convened.
I was just thinking we could present once.
Oh, yeah,
But I think coming before the zoning committee and making a pared down report and saying, here, these are the issues, here's the intro, this is what Gary said, this is what we tried to do, here are some of the thoughts we had. Could be 20 minutes, and we're asking you to do something, we're recommending that zoning do something, so you should hear it from us. And then tear it up.
I think, so it's a FOIA question, whether the members of your commission can attend. I believe that they can be in attendance and
not be a
and not break
meeting.
the rules. So you don't necessarily, I believe, need that joint meeting, but you can get clarification on that issue. And then I think the zoning commission can certainly receive a copy of the report and the exhibits.
We got a copy of the midterm one.
Right,
Yeah.
right, the status report, so that'll help. And then maybe you could, at some meeting, perhaps ask your commission, when would be a time to just do,
We could put it on the agenda, definitely.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get people to come to these meetings so far, Norm and Debbie or.
Right, I've seen Norm
Yeah.
in the back
Yeah.
there a few times, yeah, because, that will give them, Paul, that would give the commission the ability to, have a question and answer session when it's presented to them too, so that'll be helpful, since
I think it's only fair, we mentioned them a
oh my
number of
God,
times.
yes.
Oh, I know.
No, and this is really primarily our recommendation is that it's primarily a zoning matter. We gotta clean that up first, and then we take it from there with any ordinance, so, okay. So that makes sense, we'll do it that way.
So we could present to the Board of Selectmen and then ask when is a good time to get on the zoning committee after?
Yeah, look at what's coming up.
Yeah.
What's a good,
Let us, let
Meeting, yeah.
everyone know, that's fine, yeah,
Mhm.
perfect, and, yeah, that works, thank you. Okay, I don't have anything else about the presentation. I don't think we need to meet separately to like go over our presentations, is that okay? I mean, do you feel we need to do that, or?
I think it might be helpful
Might be
if
helpful.
somebody at least collects everybody's presentation and just goes through it for continuity and making sure that there's no contradictions, that one is saying something opposite of what another said.
So you think, a little outline from everyone on what they are going to emphasize in their presentation
Might be helpful.
might be helpful.
but if I'm doing, say, section 6, I'll be doing section 6. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
understand why I make another outline. I'd be doing the highlights.
Yeah,
and-
you'd be highlighting it,
So we're gonna have an hour with question and answer?
yes.
That means each person's gonna have 10 minutes max,
Max.
not including questions.
Yeah, you have to have a little time in there for, anyone from the group that is not presenting a section but wants to talk about something that they feel they need to speak about.
I mean, we're not doing 10 minutes each, right?
No, that's a
We're
lot.
basically doing an overview of what we have, right? There's 6 of us, that'd be an hour of that meeting. Just-
Yeah, no,
just
there's no
in
need to,
presentation.
there's no need to, yeah.
I mean, we can, if that's what you want. I mean, the Senate was famous for talking for hours.
No, I don't think we need to.
Who's famous?
The Senate.
10 minutes goes by quick, but you can say a lot in 10 minutes.
Yeah, you can say a lot in 10.
But
You should try to keep it to 5 to 7. That's what I think. It depending on the section you have to do, like some sections are bigger
I
than
mean,
others.
just thinking about the Board of Selectmen, saying that they want to listen to it for an
Yes,
hour.
no.
Plus 10 minutes of
No,
questions. I mean, we'll know if they say no questions.
then we're in trouble.
then we were successful.
I don't know. And some people read ahead as selectmen, they'll read this document and look at the exhibits ahead, and others will not. I've seen, Paul has seen that, right? So we don't know who, people may or may not, the selectmen, individual selectmen members may or may not have the opportunity to read ahead. We're giving them plenty of time, but it's not to say that they've necessarily read, so. Okay. So to Gary's idea, I don't want to, about the outline, just, you're not too in favor of that, or, yeah?
I'd just be pulling from here. I mean, I can, but.
I mean, I think it's a common practice to see what people are going to be saying. So it's not unheard of, right?
Right.
Mm.
It's I mean, it probably wouldn't happen, but I have done presentations
Yes,
with
I
people
know.
before.
I know,
And
I've done them too.
About midway through it, you're shaking your head saying, well, where did that come from?
Well, maybe a couple of if it's not an outline, just a couple of sentences. What are you going to highlight? What do you find most important? That if you given the section, and it'll be section 6 for you, section 6. Given section 6, given section 9, what are those things that you feel you most want to convey? And you can. I mean, yes, we're using this for the convenience of the sections to present, and all the work done to get to those those recommendations. But if there's like a tidbit of something you remember, a fact, a particular zoning reg you've read from another town that you wanna say, and by the way, keep that zoning reg in mind, that's what you should be doing. You should occasionally bring in something that has struck you, as critical. This is not like robotic and you're looking at the section and this is all you can say, that's not helpful, You're giving them this plus the flavor of everything, so, okay.
What?
Right, so a couple of sentences. So when you go and you look, it also kind of is a little exercise in forcing you to, when you have to write a couple of sentences about what you're going to present, it'll force you to look at that again and just make sure that we're not missing something. We're not missing the main point of something.
Okay.
Okay, so that works. So, and we can just distribute, that can be done without a meeting, I believe, and we can just, Brooke, you can distribute something like that. Yeah. So when would you
You
like
can
to,
edit those.
and when would you like to, and you will be graded on it. No, so you won't be graded on it. So when in March?
I'll grade you.
Yeah,
Remedial
I'm not
editing.
sending anything to you. Yikes.
Watch out.
I know. All right, so today's the 10th,
We have another meeting?
no, we don't need another
Oh, okay.
meeting, but just to so remember the presentation is April 2nd. So, I'd say, when should we share some little sentences on our presentation? What would be a convenient date for everyone to look at your sections and say, okay, I can write a couple of sentences?
April 1st.
April 1st, no.
It's April 2nd.
No. So, today's the 10th, we are presenting on the 2nd, so give some time in between. Brooke and I will work on getting those physical reports to the Board of Selectmen members, so that's,
So
we
by
have a little
March
system going,
24th,
right?
is March 24th, that's kind of right in the middle of it.
yeah, that's fine. So by March 24th, Monday, March 24th, let's make sure that we have shared, and you can do it at any time. If you want to go home and do it now, you can do it. Doesn't matter. So that works. Okay. And I think that's just helpful, and it'll force you to not wait till the end of the period of time to do a presentation in your head or on paper. Okay. Okay, I think we're done with section 6. I think we've dealt with the aspects of that, so we don't really need to schedule a future meeting. So we're on to committee member comments. We don't have ex officios. Any last comments, thoughts? Okay, thank you all for everything, and then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, thanks. All right, adjourn.